So I'll be sharing this file with you, but just go through this fairly simple code actually. Just take a minute to read through this and I'll explain what I want to do out here. Initially, first, of course, was create a register page. See that I can put it in the chat window, everything fits on. Yeah. So I just shared it in the chat window also. Right. You can read it from either the chat window or from here. I'll also be uploading this onto our folder. All right. So let me take you to what I have asked you to do. First is to create a register page, which would contain the following details: login name, password, confirm password, full name, email ID, city, which is a drop-down list box. So he has to choose a city from that given list of cities, and the phone number. All right. Simple register, page out here. When you click on register, the record should be inserted into the database. So you'll have to create a database for this. Right. You'll have to create the necessary tables for this. What are the, into what table would you store this? Give me the name of a table that you would like to store this into.
Employee.
Sorry? Employees, these are actually okay. Not necessarily employees, this could be whatever. Maybe users or user details or whatever else that you're calling it. All right. Now, one of the fields there is city, which I've asked you to take as a drop down. So this would actually come in from another table, which is the cities. So make a note of all these things as I'm, calling them out, so that when you're actually doing it, you will remember to do all of these things. So city is a drop down which would come in from the cities table. What will be the structure of the cities table? What will the cities table contain?
City ID and city name.
City ID and city name, with city ID being the primary key. Okay. Now in the other table, let's say somebody called it employees or user details or whatever else you're calling this table. Can you name me the columns that would now exist in this other table when you're registering? What are the columns that go in there? Firstly, to begin with,
Name.
Login name, then password, right? Confirm password, of course, will not be stored in the database. Full name, email ID, and then this city would now be what? Would be
City ID.
City ID, which is a foreign key and related to the cities.city ID. So that is what I'm expecting you to do, right? And then the phone number. Okay. So this is what is required. What will be the primary key out here? Which would be the unique primary key out here?
Email ID.
All right. Now I'm not accepting email ID for logging in. I'm not accepting email ID for logging in. What am I accepting for logging in? Login name and password. So your login name here in this case could be your primary key, right? If you want, you can make email ID as unique, right? You can't have that duplicate. If you want, you can do that. But primary key here, of course, is the login name. All right. You have two buttons here, a register button and a reset button. In terms of the views that you create, what is this like? What scaffolding is this like? Similar to what? Yes, please. Similar to what? You have tried out different scaffoldings. You have tried out the basic CRUD operations. So what register page is equivalent of what scaffolding?
Create.
Create.
Hmm.
Absolutely. All right. So whatever you're doing on create, similar things you'll have to do on register. Okay. So is the register page clear? Everybody, are we clear about what the register page should do?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
The second page, of course, is the login page. The login page has login name, password, and a checkbox for remember me. Okay. Two buttons, in fact, one button and one link, a button for login and a new user is a hyperlink which takes you to the register page. All right. So this is what is there on the login page. Fairly simple. I mean, standard login page that you see. First thing, before I go ahead further, tell me what scaffolding would you use for this? What is this scaffolding similar to?
Details.
Details is only showing it. Detail scaffolding doesn't allow you to pick up the values. It allows you to display the values. So details is wrong.
Create.
This is also create. So here also what would happen? Firstly, initially the form would be blank. The login name and password initially will be blank. And then the user will fill in that and then click on the submit button. So this also is a scaffolding which is similar to create. But in the code for login, you will not write code to insert. In the code for login, you will write code for checking whether it's a valid user or not. So the scaffolding that you're generating can be like create. Now, of course, when the scaffolding is generated, it comes some default scaffolding. And then you can either add more controls to it or remove controls from it. So if you generate it with all of this, you know, the login name password is required. The others, full name, email ID, city, phone, you can delete that code that is generated. Or you can type it out from scratch on your own. Now you'll have seen how to do that. You'll know how to do that. You'll know how to use HTML controls, HTML helpers and do that. Create a HTML.begin form, create a submit button at the end. So you can type out code on your own. Or alternatively, you could generate the scaffolding and then change what you want, remove what you don't want, add what you want. So for example, that remember me checkbox needs to be added. All right. Are we clear on this? So this is what you'll need to do out here in the login page. How do you, when he submits the value, how do you read the value at the server? How do you read the value from there? One is from the object, you can read it. Second possibility, for controls that are not part of that object, those could be parameters. So for example, if your checkbox is called CHK remember me, assuming it is called CHK remember me, then you will need to have a parameter called CHK remember me in your method. Please understand clearly and don't just shake your head and don't ask me questions if you're not understanding it. Because I'm not going to be there with you in the lab when you're doing this. You have to do this today and tomorrow, whatever time that you have. All right. So whatever questions you have, ask me. Whatever clarifications you need, please ask me. What am I saying this? Remember me. How do you get it at the server side? How do you know whether he has checked that checkbox or not? So
through form collections, can we do that?
You can do that through form collection, but then you'll need to have two things. So you'll have to have form collection also. It will work with form collection. Yes, answer is yes. So you'll need to have form collection also, and you'll need to have what? The class also you'll need to have. For the other two properties, login name and password will come in through the class, through an object of that class.
So we can do that by using form collection also, as in like.
Yes, you can, but as far as possible, try and use model binding.
Okay, sir.
Okay. And then the extra things that you want. If you see, form collection will also work. There's no problem about that. But I'm suggesting what you need out here are three things. You need login name, password, and you need remember me. So login name, password is coming through an object of your class using binding. That is very easy. Now the extra parameter that you have, the remember me, you keep it as another parameter, and whatever the name that you give to the control, give the parameter also the same name. So it will automatically pick up that value, and then you can read that value directly. Or form collection, no problem. Or alternative approach,
View bag.
view model.
View.
What is a view
Right.
model? You create a class that is required for the view. So that class will now have three properties. It will have login name, password, and another check, whatever, remember me option, which is Boolean. So different techniques exist. Use the one which you think would be the best. And be aware of all of them. Don't just blindly do it. Be aware of what you're doing, where, why. So all these little things that we've done before that will all come into play out here now. Are we all clear about this? If you're not clear, please ask me. I don't mind explaining it again. But don't go back into the lab and say, or in a different language. Abhi kya karne ka? Kya karo abhi? Abhi kya karne ka? Kya bola sir ne? I don't want those reactions. If you're able to understand it here, that is where your coding would become easier. So are we clear on this? Different approaches for reading this, remember. One possibility, view model, one possibility, form collection, one possibility, additional property I've given you what? Create a parameter that matches the same name as the control that you're creating on the form. The name of the control and the parameter name must be the same. Binding will help you with the rest of the code. Okay, so now let me discuss the functionality. I'm sure you'll know the functionality of this page. All right. I'm sure we know the functionality of this page. And the functionality of this page is as follows. Forget about remember me for now. Initially, if he enters the login name and password, you're checking up against the database. If the login name and password is correct, then he'll be taken to the home page. I'll show you the home page out there. If the login name and password is incorrect, then what do we do? Then what should he see out there?
Error message.
Error message saying that invalid login name or password. Error message same way as we have done earlier. To pass something from the controller to the view, you can pass it in viewback.message. So that will take care of the login name and password, that part of it. Now, additionally, you also need to work about remember me. So what is the functionality of remember me? What am I asking you all to do out here?
Session management.
Cookies.
Session cookie.
Cookie.
Yes,
This is a cookie actually.
Yes.
Which says that if remember me is checked, supposing login name and password was correct, and if remember me was checked, then a cookie should be created storing the login name and password. If it was not checked, don't create a cookie. But if it was checked, if the login name and password was correct, and if it was checked, then the cookie is created. End of the story. Now you come back later. When you come back later to the same page, suppose you come to the login page. Now see what happens in Gmail. Open your Gmail right now for me on your machines. Open your Gmail. Open your Gmail on your machines. Open it. I'm waiting for a second so you see what's happening there. Don't make me open mine. I don't want to show you my mails. So when you open Gmail, did it show you the login page?
No, sir. No, sir.
No, sir.
What did it do? What did it do? Directly take you to your home page. The inbox is your home page. So if you are logged in, already before, next time you come to the login page, directly it should take you to the home page. without showing you the login page. Don't even show you the login page. It didn't even show you. What did it do? It read the cookie, checked whether the cookie was correct or not, and went to the home page. So this is what the functionality that I want out here. Are we clear on this, everybody? Where is this code being written? Where is this code being written? Where are they writing this
Controller.
code? Yeah, I think yes, in the controller, but where, in which method of the controller?
Index.
Thank God you didn't say in their project they're writing. There is no index page. You see an index page there anywhere. There is no index page.
Home page.
Login.
Login. Where in the login? Where in the login? You're giving me incomplete answers.
After successful login.
Nahi re baba. The functionality that I just described to you, which says that if he is already logged in and he tries to go to the login page again, like what you all did, not even show him the login page, directly take him where? To his home page. So where are you writing this code? Where is Gmail writing this code? If Gmail was an ASP.NET MVC project.
So in the if else block inside login.
You are giving me incomplete answers today, Kaustuv.
Get controller.
I'm not going to give you I'm not going to ask you the question that way because that will be the answer in the question.
Remember me.
What is remember me? What sort of an answer is remember me? I will remember you, but what sort of an answer is remember me?
Sir, if remember me is check means boolean returns true, then it should redirect to home page.
Before taking
No.
parameters.
Post part of the login.
Wrong answer. I'm asking you ki if it has already been created, then directly take him to the home page. Where are you writing this code?
Home page.
No. How can you directly write the code in the home page if he is not gone to the home page? The girl who gave the answer, I told her wrong, but the other part of the answer is the right answer.
The login HTML page.
Saurabh, can you talk? Number 100. Is your mic working, Saurabh?
Sir.
Yes, is it working or no?
Yes, working, sir.
So all of us are idiots trying to talk out here. You're the only one who's the smartass who's trying to.
No,
put
sir.
the
No, sir. I gave the answer in voice.
Where? I didn't hear you.
Okay,
If you
sir.
gave the answer,
Sorry.
if I didn't hear you again, you repeat the answer.
Okay, sorry, sir.
So the correct answer is in the get of the login. There are two things in the login. There is a get and there is a post. So if you're just telling me login, that's an incomplete answer. Which part of the login are we doing this? When he first goes to the login page, where is he first going to the login page? He's doing that in the get. And after that, when the get is shown, then he enters the login name password, then he selects that, then he clicks on, login. That is the post part of the page. That is where you're creating the cookie. But reading whether the cookie is there or not. And if it is there, then is it the correct cookie or not? Is it the correct value or not? This is happening in your get. All right. So whenever you look at a method, don't just say, I will write code in that method. You have to figure out, is it the get of the method? Is it the post of the method? When do you want it to happen? Ask yourself that question. It's not enough just saying, okay, I will write it in login. Where in login? There are two methods in login. So is this clear? So in the get for the login is where you're checking whether the cookie is already created. And if the cookie was already created, then what do you do? If the cookie was already created, what do you do? What does Gmail do?
Direct home page.
No.
Check in the database and then
Exactly. Check in the database whether it is correct or not. How do you know whether the value is correct or not? If it is correct, then you go to the login. Then you go to the home page. So this is the logic. All this is logic. I don't need to even explain to you. 15 minutes I've spent trying to explain to you all the logic. All this logic you all should know already. I should only be telling you the code, but I know for sure that you all are going to struggle with it. based on my previous experience with earlier batches. I know what's going to happen. I know the mistakes. I can predict the mistakes you're going to make. So which is why I'm spending time with you, and which is why I'm telling you, ask me questions if you're not understanding any statements that I'm making. So that takes care of the login page, right? Moving on to the home page. Home page shows you what? Shows you what? Welcome, login name, and shows you the full name of that user. So figure out what you need to do to get it working. You all have all the ingredients with you. Figure out how you will get it working. Full name of the user is in the database. So the login name that is entered here should also be available here and should also be available here. So without saying anything, I'm telling you what it should be. Whatever login name you enter here should also be available here and should also be available here. So without telling you the answer, I'm actually giving you the answer when I'm showing you this. Do you want me to spell it out for you? Or you all know the answer? Say yes if you know the answer. The login name from here to be shown here and here. How many of you know the answer to this? Ki, haan, this is how we're going to do this. Don't give me the answer, but tell me whether you know it or not. Put in a yes in the chat window saying that, okay, yes, I know what you're talking about. Something which is entered on the first view should be available in the second view, third view, so on and so forth. In subsequent requests, that's what we're talking about. Now, I can't get more explicit in that without giving you the answer. All right. Okay, good. Got about 25-30 people saying yes, so maybe more than 25. All right, so that's one part of it. All right, thank you for the responses. Others, unless you tried out the code from the previous session, you will not be able to understand that. And there is a clue in that statement as well. All right. So coming back to this, so you got welcome full name. This is just displaying the values, not accepting anything. Then you have a hyperlink which takes you to the update profile. And then you have a button which is logout. What should the logout button do? What should the logout button do? I have in fact given you the code also there on the right hand side. Three things it should do.
Yes.
Abandon the session. To abandon the session, abandon is ending the session. Session.abandon. I don't think that we have tried it in the earlier code, but you can try it here in this project. Second thing is delete the cookie if it was present. And third thing is throw him back to the login page. All right. So these are the three things that you do. Update profile, of course, is a hyperlink. Update profile is a hyperlink. It takes you where? To the update profile page, which shows you the login name. All right. It shows you the login name, which shows you other details here. Now, these details can be updated. Login name, of course, cannot be updated. That's the primary key field. So these details can be updated. So what template, what scaffolding is this?
Edit.
Correct. So this is essentially your edit page. There's an update statement happening there. So if you've done the edit successfully, then this should work. City again should be a drop down there. City ID again is a drop down there. So whatever you've done in the previous example, that also I'm asking you to redo it again out here. Now there are different buttons here. One button here is update. One button here is logout. Okay, there are two buttons here. There is a logout and an update, and there is a home page. Home page is a hyperlink out. Now, if you're getting two buttons, how are you going to write down the code for two buttons? What are you going to do with the two buttons? Because so far we've been working with only one button on one page. So how do you know which button has been submitted? Because user might click on update also, user might click on logout also. Both of them are doing what? Both of them are doing a post. So what can we do again? Again, one simple way of doing this is whatever is the name of the button, keep a parameter with that name. So supposing it was called BTN update. You keep a parameter in your method called str, string BTN update. String BTN update. And another parameter string BTN logout. Assuming BTN update and BTN logout were your button names. Now, whichever button has been clicked will not be a blank string. So if button update has been clicked, the text in there will be update. If logout has been clicked, the text in there will be logout. If update has been clicked, then logout will have a blank string in it. So this is what you'll have to keep as a parameter in which method? In your post for the update. And that's how you can write code for what if there are multiple buttons on one page. So read this article. There's one nice article that I'm just putting in the chat window, right? Which discusses different options out here, different techniques for how to handle what if there are more than one ways of submitting a page. All right. So read this, would help you with this. And the simplest option is what I have actually told you. But there are a couple of other ways of also doing this as well. All right. Okay, so this is what the assignment is all about. Questions, doubts, if any. Make a note of these things. First thing is use your own layout. Create your own layout. Don't use the default layout that is given out there. Create a layout of your own and use that. It can be a very simple layout, but use your own layout. You know HTML, so I'm not going to help you with that part of it. Secondly, use at least one partial view. Make a note of this piece. Use your own layouts, use at least one partial view. Okay, use data annotations wherever required. All right, so these are the things that I would like you to work. Okay, it's like a little mini project out here, which basically covers all concepts that we have looked at separately. So this sort of bundles them all together. If you can do this now, then I am confident that you should be able to code with any other page. I get that confidence if you can complete this project on your own. So help me gain that confidence. Okay. You all have a lab exam coming up, right? I'm surprised nobody's asked me as it what to expect in there. Basically, whatever we've done since day one. So all your classes, all your, this thing, it's not a console lab. I'll give you that much. Chalo. It is not a console lab. Okay, so there's no console.writeLine statement in there. Every console.writeLine statement that you put in there will result in -5 marks. Every console.writeLine or a console.readLine. -5 for every such line that you write down. Okay, so there will be an element of databases. There will be an element of ASP.NET MVC. There will be, all the concepts that we've been learning in ASP.NET MVC, that will be there. There will be classes concepts coming in. So all of those concepts will be there in your project. All right. And I'm also telling you it's an ASP.NET MVC project. So use your brains, figure out what it could be. Figure out if you've tried out all the lab work correctly of what we have done, then I see no reason why you all should not get 100 out of 100. I mean, 100%, whatever, 40 mark test or whatever it is. But I see no reason why you should not crack it with a 40 on 40. I have no doubt in my mind that a majority of you all should get that. And why I'm saying majority, maybe 1 or 2 minor mistakes here. So I'm looking forward to 100% in this lab exam. And for that, the only way of doing this is practice. If you practice all your concepts, then you're going to crack the exam. Take it from me in writing. All right. I will share this in a short while. Let's move on. We have spent about half an hour just discussing the assignment. Please complete the assignment. Right? I can't say any more. Let's move on to a couple of other concepts. So we have been so far writing code to connect to a database, and from your front end, you've been calling those methods on the database, and then the updating the database, inserting basic CRUD operations have been doing accordingly. Instead of us using ADO.NET, when you're using what those libraries, like you're creating a SQL connection, SQL command, whatever, SQL data reader, all of those. So instead of doing that, we're going to use the entity framework to work with the database. We have in passing mentioned this, that this is actually an ORM tool where majority of the code would be, majority of the part would be the configuration, and you would not have to write much code. The code would be actually generated for you. All right. Now, how does this work? How does, in fact, most ORMs, how do they work? What exactly do they do? What they do is for all the tables that you have in your system, they create corresponding classes for that. Okay, so typically in most cases it's a one-to-one matching between the table and a class. All right, now a table typically would consist of different columns. And for every column that you have, typically here, you would have a property in the class. Right? And it would actually create a class which, maps to a table with properties that map to different columns in the table. This is what the ORM tool is doing for you. Now, how does this logic work, or why does this logic work, or why is it working so well? This relies on a very simple fundamental. Are you all aware of an ER diagram in ERD? Entity relationship diagram. Have you all created one in software engineering? Have you all done one? Have you all gone through the system and figured out what are the entities in the system, and created an ER diagram showing the relations between the entities? Have you all done that once at least? If not in CDAC, at least elsewhere, somewhere outside, wherever, somewhere you have done that, right? Now, so at the end of your object-oriented analysis, what you generally have is an ER diagram. Okay. Now that ER diagram goes to two people. This ER diagram, supposing you develop the ER diagram, this goes to two people. Who are the two people it goes to? One is the database administrator, all right, and the second one is the system architect. So system architect is the guy who's designing all the classes in your system and whatnot. So both of these people get the ER diagram. Now, of course, maybe the ER diagram has been made by the systems and analyst, maybe the systems architect itself. So physically it might be one person, but actually logically there are two different people. So one guy, the DB administrator, does what? Looks at the ER diagram and all your entities become what? All your entities become tables. And what do entities have? What are those called? Each entity has what? No, entity doesn't have column. Entity has attributes. So all your attributes become columns. So entity becomes table, attribute becomes column. For whom? For whom? For the database administrator. Now the ER diagram is also gone to the system architect. All right, and these could be different people. And what this guy says is, okay, my entity will become a class, and my attribute in .NET we call it what? Attribute becomes here a property. So if you look at the source for both of these, for the table and the class, the source for both of these is the same, right? They're both coming in from where? From an entity. And the column and the property are both coming in from where? From an attribute. Therefore, there can be a direct one-to-one match. Are we clear on this between the two? This is how it works. So the ORM tool uses this funda. And the ORM tool says, you know what? I will create, supposing these are the tables that are there. These are the tables that are there. I will create what? Classes from here. This is what it can say. What is it saying? If you give me a table, what can I create? What can I create? What is the ORM tool saying? Give me a table, I'll give you what?
Classes or entity.
Class.
Now it is also smart enough to say, if you give me a class, I will generate the tables. So you give me one, I'll give you the other. And it's, I mean, even you could do this, right? You think the ORM tool is going to break, it's basically simply mapping the two, right? So this is what we are going to be looking at. So they are basically here, majorly two approaches that you follow. First is something called as DB first. Secondly, something called as code first. So you explain to me, what do you think DB first would do? What do you think DB first would do?
Create
Create tables.
That means the tables have to be created first. Somebody has to create them. In this case, who will create them? The database administrator will create them. And what will the ORM tool do from there? From there, it will do what? It will generate the
Classes.
classes. This is the DB first approach. Second approach, code first. As the name suggests, what do you have to do first? First, what did you do?
Entity class.
Write down the code for the classes. Who's going to do that? Who's going to design the classes and create the code for the classes? Who's going to do that?
System architect.
System architect. And then from there, what will be generated?
Tables in database.
Tables will be generated. So that's your code first approach. So either, even if one of them is there, you could actually work with this. There's a third option. Model first. Now this option is used when the database administrator and the system architect both are not there in the system. Imagine, both are not there. So what are they saying? They're saying anybody can come and draw me a model, draw me a graphical representation of what the entities are. So draw like a ER diagram, draw something like a ER diagram. And from there I will generate what? If I'm drawing a ER diagram, from there what can I generate? I can generate the tables also. And I can generate the classes also. So this is called as model first. But this is generally not used. Practically speaking, I'm saying nobody uses this. Why? I'll tell you why. I'll tell you the reason also why. If you're using DB first, right? If you're using DB first, this is the one that is used most frequently. Because in most cases, your database is generally designed first. That is generally the traditionally always been the start point of your application. You first create the database. So from that mindset point of view, I mean, all of us oldies were all our life used to doing when first we'll create the database. Generally at this stage, you all are not oldies, you all are just getting into the project. So you all are not the deciding factor. Some other old guy sitting out there in the 10 years older than you at least will be, deciding. So his mindset is what always, now I have to first design the database. I'll first create the stored procedures. I'll create all of that properly. Then from there, I can generate the classes easily. And this is the approach that is used a majority of the times. Some of the newer generation people would say, you know what, I'm not very good at databases, but I'm excellent at creating these classes and generating the code between the classes and whatnot. So let me do a code first. All right. And then from there, the database will be generated. And I'm not too very particular about what is happening in the database because most of my code is in the code first. Most of my stuff is happening at the classes. Now, the third, this thing is, I'm not sure about any of these two approaches. I don't know how to work with databases very well, and I don't know how to work with classes very well. All right. Maybe I'm a functional guy. I'm not so much a technical guy. I'm more of a functional guy. So I understand the system well, but I don't know how to write code for databases or I don't know how to write code for the classes. So this sort of guy will create the model first. So generally, you don't leave it to this sort of a guy to create it because he may not necessarily take care of all possibilities. I'm talking about practical examples, what is actually happening. Okay. So this last approach is good for where if you want to create like you want to show the client, the boss calls you in the night and says, "Arey, kal subah main bolne bhul gaya, 3-4 days back, I had to tell you, but I forgot. Tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock in the morning, there's a client presentation." All right. The client is sitting in Australia, 8 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock actually he wanted. I told him 8 o'clock in the morning, you have to make a presentation, show him a small system. So then this model first approach could be used. But otherwise, these are the first two would be the ones that will be focusing. All right. Now, if you take up the DB first approach, what it does is, as I said, it generates classes. Supposing there are 5 tables. Okay. Supposing there are 5 tables. What will it do? It will generate how many classes? How many classes would it generate? Yeah. 5. As many number of classes in the table, those many classes. So generate the classes. All right. And it will create what is known as a DB context class. So DB context class is a class that inherits from something called as DB context. And this DB context is a class defined in the entity framework. Okay. Now I'll tell you what is there in the DB context class. Now in this DB context class, you will create a collection of all these classes that you're creating. Supposing you've got 3 classes or 5 classes. Supposing there are 5 classes, you will create 5 collections, 1 for each class. So you will create a collection for each of the classes. So supposing in our system, there was an employee and department. So first step will be two classes called employee and department. And then in the DB context, you will have a collection for employees and a collection for departments. All right. This is what would be, you don't have to write this code. This is being generated for you. Now, all the magic is done by the DB context class. The DB context class will be responsible for all the magic that's happening. So what will it do? It will read the value from the database. It will read the value from the database, from that table, and it will populate the collections. All right. So whatever tables are there, remember for each table there's a class, for each class there's a collection. Whatever tables are there, you will have now a collection containing all the records that the table has. Then the DB context class also has certain methods, inbuilt methods, which allow you to do basic CRUD operations. So what are the things that you will do? One is returning all the records. Second is, insert, update, and delete. So it will have methods in there for doing these basic operations. Now, whatever operations you're doing with the collection. So you, the programmer, are making changes to this collection. So you're either adding a record to the collection or inserting, you're updating a record or deleting a record from the collection. And the moment you make a change in here, internally, it keeps track of this. Any guesses? I don't expect you to know the answer. Any guesses how it will keep track of what changes you're making? Any guess? In this collection, how it will keep track of what are the updates, inserts, deletes that you're making? What will it do to keep track of that? Any guess?
So
Data
like,
type.
Data
like we,
data.
Trigger.
So remember the row state in data sets?
yes, sir.
So you had those 4 row states added, modified, deleted, and unchanged. Similarly here, this is not a data set, but similarly here it will have those 4 row states. So any changes that you make, it is keeping track of that using that row state. Same funda that we learned in data sets. Same funda. And when you try to save the value, the DB context again is doing all of this. You don't have to write any major code. The DB context will go through all the values, find out what are the updates that need to make, find out what are the deletes, find out what are the inserts, and we'll go and make them in the database. So all the magic, all the hard work is being done by whom? Done by DB context. All that you're doing is what you're creating a class that inherits from the DB context. And for that, this thing, you have to create a collection for each of these. This also you don't have to do. This also you don't have to do. This who's generating this for you? This code also who's generating? The entity framework. This was which approach would this be? Generate the classes and then all of this. What approach would this be?
Code first.
Would be DB first. Database is already there. How will the generate classes happen? Classes have to be generated from the database. No? I'm not saying write your own class. I'm saying generate. Do you understand the meaning of the word generate code? Code is automatically being created for you. So how will it understand the classes? Only if you've got the database in place. This is what you'll have to do out here for DB first. Second thing, for code first, you tell me what you need to do for code first. What would you need to do for code first? Tell me, what will you need to do?
So
Write the
create,
classes.
You'll have to write classes for whatever employee department. Remember, no database right now. You'll have to write the classes And you'll have to write a DB context class. You'll have to write that. So reverse engineering. You do this step first. You write the classes for this. And then from there, what will the entity framework do? What will the entity framework do?
Generate tables in database.
You generate the database. So this in essence is what we are going to be doing. No coding. No coding. Relaxed session. You want to code with me for the DB first? You can in class itself do it. Okay. But you have to be a little alert. I'm not going to sit and solve errors. Okay. It'll take me too long if you're not able to do a certain thing or whatever. Okay. So we're going to try out one of these. We're going to try DB first, code first. I'm not trying out model first. Model first is rarely used. Be aware of what is model first. I'll give you a link where you can try out a small tutorial for model first. All right. But I'm not going to do that for you because I believe in doing what people will ask you when you go for the interview. So you know, okay, there is something called model first, but rarely ever use. I have consulted on a lot of projects. I have never seen a project where you're using model first. Model first is almost like admitting that our database guy is not there and our system architect is also not there. It's like admitting that. So nobody likes to do that. Okay. Let's go back. Let's create this. So let's go in for Visual Studio. Do this with me, please. Together. What are we doing here? Firstly, which approach? DB first. All right. Your database is already there. Yes or no? You already have a database, right? Okay. So create a new project. ASP.NET Web Application again. Okay. And I'm calling this DB first example. Let's say EF DB first example. EF is entity framework DB first example. Create. Okay. Again, the same things as before. MVC with don't configure for HTTPS and create. This is the easy approach for you. Why is this the easy and no tension approach for you? Database is already there. Classes generated by whom? By whom? Who will generate the classes?
Yes.
Entity framework. So you can just sit back and relax. All right. Okay. First thing is you need to add a reference to the entity framework. Okay. So when your project opens, it might take a few more seconds than mine. So listen carefully while your project is opening. You need to first add a reference to the entity framework, but the entity framework is not on your machine. It is not there on your machine. It is there on the internet somewhere. Okay. So how do you get a reference to that? How do you add a reference to that? You can't add a reference because it's not on your local machine here. So in such cases, when you want to include the library which is from outside, which is from running on the internet somewhere, and you want to add that library to your project, you're going to use something called as a NuGet package. So this NuGet package manager allows you to manage any such additional packages that you want to install on your machine, which are not already on your machine. So do this with me, please. Go to the tools menu. Please do this with me. I'll call out what I'm doing. So hopefully you don't need to look at two screens. Go to the tools menu. Choose the NuGet package manager. And under the NuGet package manager, you have manage NuGet packages for solution. So this is the UI tool with which you can add the NuGet package. The other option is under NuGet Package Manager, you had Package Manager Console. That is a command line option. There you need to know the commands. All right. So on some websites, they will not tell you ki manage NuGet packages for solution. They will show you the name of the command. And you can copy paste from there and run it from the Package Manager Console. So the Package Manager Console is a command line utility for managing NuGet packages. We'll take the easier option, which is manage NuGet packages for solution. So please select this. So it shows you what are the installed packages already. What packages have already been installed, it shows you those. So these have been pre-installed out here. Go into browse. Okay, go into browse. And in the browse, type out, don't make any mistakes while typing it out. Entity framework, one word. Just type out entity framework, one word. Don't give any spaces also. Okay. Now, in the list of options below, it now refreshes and shows you the entity framework. Be careful. There is an entity framework for core, for .NET Core, which is different, and entity framework for .NET Framework, which is different. So right now, since we are in .NET Framework, we're going to pick up the first option shown there, which is entity framework. Do not pick up .NET Core. Do not pick up the .core out there. All right, now look at my screen for a minute. Check what I'm doing on my screen for the minute. Once you select this entity framework, you have to come in see, these are all the open projects out here. So for which project you want to install it? So I'll select for this project I want to install. Okay. And here it shows you the status. Current status is what? In my case, what is it? It is not installed. If it was installed, then you can go and uninstall it. So the button here would have been uninstalled. So sometimes you might want to remove a package, in which case you go and uninstall. All right, now look below. Pick up the 6 point, whatever is the latest after that. This will keep changing. So maybe a month later, you might have a 6.4.5. All right. Whatever the latest package that you can see, latest stable package, 6.4.4, it'll be all same for all of us. Pick that up and click on install. Okay, click on install. Are you all with me on this so far?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes,
When you click on install, it will prompt you, ki, please accept. It will prompt you, this is what I need. Are you sure? Please accept. You have no option here. You have to accept. So there's no, no, I don't want to accept. What if I don't want to accept? No option. You have to accept. So I accept, humbly accept whatever the great master .NET is telling me. I don't have an option here. And at some point it will finish installing. So at the end of the installation, it should show you that it has finished installing it. Sometimes it might take a little longer on slower connections. All right, where your internet connectivity is slow, it might take a little long. All right, so we have finished installing it. Once you finish installing it, let's move on. Let's close the window and move on.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
I didn't get that option to accept or no.
Nitin, there is after OK. First, you have to click OK.
You click on install first.
Yes. What it's about it.
All right. So that shows you that this is currently installed. And close the window. Let's move on. All right. Are we all here?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now in this project, we're going to add the classes generated by the entity framework. So entity framework is going to generate some classes and we're going to add those classes. Okay, so to do that, go into the project menu, choose add new item, project menu, add new item, and type out, in the search, you can just type out entity. So it's easier for you to locate it. Okay, type out entity and that will be easier for you to locate that. All right. From there, pick up the ADO.NET entity data model. Pick up the ADO.NET entity data model. And it's just generating some default names. Model 1 it's calling it. I'm not changing the name. You can change it if you want to, but I'm not changing anything. All right, I suggest you keep it the same name also. So when I refer to it, it shows you the same. Click on add. When you select that, the next screen comes up. And here what it does is gives you different options. Like for example, it's saying EF designer from database. So this is going to generate a UI tool which shows you all the classes. That is what they're calling as the EF designer. The second option you have what is an empty EF designer. So if you wanted to use that model first approach, you go in for the second option out. Empty code first approach, code first model is a variation of the model first approach. And code first from database, the last option there, all right, is again, you're specifying a database and then creating the classes from there without creating a model out here. So I'm not doing that any of the last three options. I'm selecting the first three because I want to also show you the visual tool that is generated. And next, all right, it asks you for which data connection do you want to use. All right. Now, I don't know whether it will show you that data connection out there or not. So just click on new connection. New connection. When you click on new connection, it will ask you for the server name. You all have been given this in code, remember? This was local DB / MS SQL local DB. That was the name of our SQL server that we are connecting to. I put that out in the chat window. Okay. Some of you all were not connecting to MS SQL local DB, but instead we're connecting to what? Projects V13. So those of you who are using projects V13, use projects V13. Those of you using MS SQL local DB, use this one.
So getting a different window, like different dialog box on my laptop.
Yes.
Show me. Again, describe what it says.
So, it is like data source is same, but the design is different, and I am not getting the option to name the.
Is it the same data source? Microsoft SQL Server into bracket SQL client.
No, there are two options: Microsoft SQL Server and Microsoft SQL Server database file.
Is it showing you this dialog box?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so continue. Okay, so I have to continue.
If it's this dialog box, just say OK, or just pick up Microsoft SQL Server and the proper provider, it should show up. And there's an option here which says always use that selection, so that will choose that. But if you select that, then this is what should come up.
Yes,
all
sir.
right.
Yes.
Okay, so you are given the server name, everybody. Then the authentication mode, right? What is the authentication mode that we're using? So we are using integrated security equal to true, and that type of authentication is called as Windows authentication. So it's either called Windows authentication or integrated authentication. So use Windows authentication and select or enter a database name. So this you can either click there and it will show you all the database names, or you can simply type it out. Give your database name. Okay. So this is taking a few seconds to connect to SQL Server. And in my case, it's JK. In fact, in all our cases, JK July 2022. You can type it out directly if you don't want to even select from that list. And test connection and see whether it succeeds or not. So what are we doing here right now? We are saying that generate the classes from this database. I'm waiting for a second while you all complete giving this.
Sir, can you repeat the add new item from where you have to add?
Project menu, add new item. In that, search for entity. When you search for entity, it should show you ADO.NET entity data model. Okay. Choose that one, ADO.NET entity data model. If it is not shown to you, that means you have not installed it. That means the installation has not happened correctly. So if that is the case, just ignore it for now. I mean, you will not be able to try this example. Okay. When you choose add, EF designer from database is what we choose next. And it's asking for choosing a data connection, go in for a new connection. And with the new connection, this is where I was before I went back out. So local DB / MS SQL. So what is that? Even I forgot.
Local DB.
Yeah. Copy paste them. Right, change that to project V13 if you are not using MS SQL locally.
Project 13, please.
Okay, the name that you're using, whatever the name that you're using, and give your database name. So in our case was what? JK July 2002. Alternatively, you can choose from the list and that will be picked up from the list. All right. Okay, so I'm going ahead with the next step. After you say okay, it shows you the connection string. It's showing you the connection string there that it's generating. Okay. There are a lot of other things in there which are not required, but that basic connection string, can you see that part? Data source equal to initial catalog equal to integrated security equal to, that part has not changed at all. That's the same thing as before. All right. Now there's an option here which says that do you want to save this connection string in web.config file? And we will say yes. I will show you what is happening here.
Hello, sir.
Next. Now this is the easy part. Now here is asking what tables do you want in your, for which tables do you want to generate the classes? So expand on that tables and select the tables that you want. In our case, we got 2 tables, select all of the tables. All right. And finish. Finish will generate this for you.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Sir, it is saying that your database doesn't exist. If I want to create it, should I create it?
See,
Because
the reason why it shows the database doesn't exist is because the database name that you're given may not be matching the actual database name. If you select from that list, it will show it to you.
no, sir, in my list, it is not showing. It is showing only 4 to 5 databases.
It is showing only what?
4 to 5, like means master model, MSDB, TempDB, like that. It
So
is
in
not
all the code that you've been writing so far, what have you been connecting to?
Sir, the database which you have told JK July 2022.
Is it in MS SQL local DB or is it in projects v13? Look at your connection string that you're connecting to. It cannot be. It will always show you the correct values.
Sir, I'm also having the same problem. Sir.
What to write?
Sorry. 1% is the person who's getting the error first. Talk to me.
Yes, sir, I will check it and.
So in your
use
code, whatever you're
MySQL
written in your code, just check the connection string there. That is what I'm asking you to give. That's all. Yeah. Next person who's asking a question. What is the question?
Sir, I use a project 13. Then what to write in a server name?
Array darling, sweetheart. Look at my chat window.
Yes, sir.
Now look at that last line that I've given you. So what is the first part out there? Local DB is the same for both of us. Instead of MS SQL local DB,
Yes.
you give projects v13, whatever the name of that database you're connecting to.
Okay.
All right. Now, once you've gone past these steps, it has created this EDMX file for you. This is what is the model file. And in that model file, there is a visual tool by which you can make changes here. So this is a visual tool. So this is actually from the database. It has generated the model also and then the classes also. Let me show you this. Just go into the view and the toolbox. View menu and the toolbox. So here in the toolbox, you can drag and drop whatever you want to. Like for example, what is department or employee? What is this? What is this? It's an entity. It's a class. So you can drag and drop. If you drag and drop an entity, don't do that right now. It will not work then. If you drag and drop an entity out here, it is actually allowing you to create it visually. So whatever you create visually, it also generates code for it accordingly. What are all of these? Department number, name, what are these? These are properties. So if you look at my screen, I can right click and I can add a new property. So I can actually go and create all of these options here. Are you clear on this, everybody? And this is what modeling is all about. Modeling is all about what? About creating these components without working with a database or without working with any class out. And that is the third option, which was model first. So you create a model, and then from the model, you can generate your database and your classes. Now we are not taking that approach. Now for the model that was generated, if you can expand that model1.edmx and you just see under that, you'll find that there is a department.cs and an employee.cs. It has created these classes for you. Can you open that department.cs? Can you open department.cs?
Yes.
Okay. First code that it says here is what? This code was generated from a template. Manual changes to this file might cause unexpected behavior. In other words, don't mess around with this. Third thing is, if you make any changes, next time you generate the code, it will be overwritten. So doubly telling you what, please don't mess with this. So don't change any of this code. But you'll notice this code is a partial class. It's a partial class. So if you want to add code of your own, if you want to add additional code of your own, what can you do? Create another class, also a partial class in the same namespace, having the same name. And that's where you can add additional features to your system. So that's a little advanced technique. I'm not going to get into that. But you can actually go and to this code that is generated, you can add additional features. Are we getting this? So this is where partial classes are being used. Okay, come down further and you'll find that it has created two properties for you. Department number and department name. Okay, so where have these properties been picked up from? This has been coming in from the database. Also, it has created a collection called employees in departments. All right, and I'll come back to this collection a little later. Let's look at employee first. So open employee.cs. Employee.cs. And here again, you have those 4 properties that are there in the database: employee number, name, basic, department number. And what has it also done? What has it also done? Line number 22. For both of us, it will be 22. What is that? What is that creating?
The object of department.
A reference of type department.
Reference.
Right? So which means now, if I have an employee object, supposing I have an employee object somewhere in my code, if I have what? Employee, and this of course I'm not going to write code here, but I'm just showing you. If I had employee E, for example, I can refer to it now empno, or I can refer to it as E.name, or I could even refer to E.department. What will this give me? What will this give me? What is E.department giving me? Look at the last property, department of type what?
Virtual.
Look at the line number 25. Department of type what? Of type department. So E.department dot, this will also show me department name. So from my employee object itself, I can now get my department properties. I don't need to do a join or anything out. So which is why they have created a department of type department out. Are we clear on this, everybody? Right. So this is the first thing that they've done. Secondly, if you go back to department, in department, what have they given you? What have they given you? Employees, which is a collection of employees. So from the department itself, you can fetch or you can get all the employees who work in that department. So they have given you cross references like this so that you need not perform joins. You can directly from that object itself get from employees, you can refer to departments. From department, you can refer to all employees who are in that department, and so on and so on. Okay. All right. Look at the other class it has created. Remember what did we say it would do? It will create a DB context class that inherits from DB context. So there's this context class, model1.context.cs. Can you open that one, please? Model1.context.cs. And it has created a class called JK July 22 entities. Why JK July 22 entities? Why has it created this class? What is the significance of the name out here? What was JK July 2022? What is JK July 2022?
Database name.
Database name.
That was the name of our database. And it adds the word entities at the end of it. And this class inherits from where? Inherits from the DB context class. This DB context class has been defined in system.data.entity. So this has been defined in the entity frame. All right. All right. What did this contain? Look at line numbers 28 and 29. What does this contain? What does the DB context class contain?
Collection
Yes.
of tables.
A collection of departments and a collection of employees. What are the collection that it's using? It's using a DB set. You have not seen this collection before, because this is part of, again, the entity framework. System.data.entity.db set. Right? So this is like a list of departments or a list of employees. But this also has methods for interacting with the database. Okay. Now the best part here is, so far we have not written a single SQL statement. Nowhere have we written any SQL statement, nothing. But the values that are there in the database will automatically be populated into departments and employees collection. Automatically. Who's doing that for you? Who's doing all the bulk of the hard work for you? Who's doing that?
DB context.
The DB context class. By doing what? By creating an object of type DB set, which can now hold that data and then work with that data. So that's it. Coding over. I'm not going to write one line of code after this. I'm not going to write a single line of code after this. All that we need to do is what? Build the project. Why build the project? Why build the project?
Check for errors.
Anytime that you make any changes in your classes, in your models, you have to build your project. Otherwise, it will not pick up the latest version. All right. Okay. Build it, please. And let's try and add a controller. Now our models are in place. These are all the models. All right. Your employee and departments are all the models. Let's add a controller. So right click on controllers. Add a controller. Right. Which controller should I take now? Which controller should I take?
Using entity framework.
The third one. So now here it says MVC controller with views using entity framework. So it's not just going to add you the methods out there. It is also going to generate for you the views. So earlier when you chose the second one, controller with read write actions, what did you need to do? You needed to go and add the views, no? Right click, add a view. Here it's going to also generate for you the views. So good. Select this option, third option, and choose add. Model class. Model class. Which one do you want to use? Which one should we use? We can use either department or employee. Let's use employee. Take employee. That's my model class. Data context class. Makes sense? What would it show you here? Which classes would it show you here?
Class created by the
All classes that inherit from DB context. All classes that inherit from DB context. So which was the class that inherits from DB context? JK July 22 entities. That was the class that was generated for this. What do you want to do? You want to generate views? Yes, please. Reference script libraries? Yes, please. Use a layout page, up to you. Name the controller employees control. Add. Scaffolding. Wait. Relax. Okay. Takes a little longer because generating all the views also. Right? Done. Take a minute to read through the code. Take a minute to read through the code. I'm going to discuss that code in a minute. First thing, look at the methods that it's generating. You may not necessarily understand the code. Can you understand the methods that it's generating? What are those methods? Are they the same as before? Yeah. So you had the index, details. Create had two methods, a get and a post. Edit had two methods, a get and a post. And delete also had two methods, a get and a post. Okay. All right. Let's break it down and see what has happened out here. First thing on top, it has created an object of this class. So tell me line number 15, what is that line number 15 doing? What is DB of type? JK July 22 entities. What class was this? What class was this? Yes. Which class was this? The DB context class. The class that inherited from DB context. What are the properties of this class? What properties did this JK July 22 entities have?
Collection of tables, departments, and employees.
Collection of departments and collection of employees. Right? So see what it's doing out here. I'm just writing the same code out here, where EMPS is equal to, if I said DB dot employees, if I said DB dot employees, what is this now? What is DB dot employees returning?
List of means collection of employees.
Collection of employees. What is that type? It is of type DB set. It is of type DB set. So this is like a list of employees, but the DB set has additional methods available out. Correct? So this is what we are doing. So if this is a collection, right? If it's a collection, can I write a link statement for this one? Yes or no? If
Yes,
DB dot employees is a collection, can I use my link methods for this?
Yes, sir.
Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
And that's what it's doing in all of this. So for example, DB dot employees dot include. Now what it says here is that this employees has what? Has what here?
Department object.
A department object also available. Now, this department object will tell you details about the current department. Will tell you the details about the current department. And this department object is being used later in my code. If you look at the view UI, this department object is used later in the view UI. Now, where would this department object be populated from? Employees, of course, will be populated from the employee table. Where will this one be populated from? Where will this one be populated from? From the department table. Now, do you want to populate it or not is what include is telling. Do you want to include it or not? Do you want to populate it or not? Do you want to only populate employees or do you want to also populate departments? That is what the include tells you. Now, if you need it in your code below, in the view, my view will be referring to this. I'll show you the view in a minute. Then populate it. If you don't need it in the view, then this is what is good enough. This is what is good enough. DB.employees is good enough. This is not including the department for the view out there. But if you need it in the view, and they do need it in the view, they're saying include the department also. What is employees now? Favorite question to you. What is employees? If you look at this, if it, yeah, in a link query, it was returning an I enumerable of something. I enumerable of something. When you're doing it in the entity framework, this will change it to I variable of something. So when you're using a DB set, and that's what we're using, right? Instead of returning an I enumerable of something, it will return a I queryable of something. If you're using a list, then to returning I enumerable of something. But here now this is returning a I queryable of something. Achha, what does toList do? What does toList do?
It converts it into a list.
Converts it into a list. What is this also doing? What is this an example of? When you work with link, what did it do for you? What was this toList or toArray or toDictionary? What did they do for you? Go on, give me an immediate answer.
Immediate execution.
Very good. So this is an example of immediate execution, which says that at this point, whatever the query had, this is what I want to return. I don't want the query to be deferred execution, which will be where you're looping through the records. I don't want that. I want at this point what the values were, I want these values to be picked up. So which is why it's converting it to a list. Are we clear on this? So this is using immediate execution as opposed to deferred. In deferred, what will happen? In the view, if you loop through it again, at that time, what are the values in the collection? It will return that. With immediate, it will return what? What are the values at this particular point of time? So this is what is actually returned out. So if you look at the index out here, this is again taking what? I enumerable of employee. So this code is similar to what was generated. And here, what is it picking up? It's picking up name, model.name, model.basic, but it is picking up model.department name. So if you notice, it was using this department out here. And because it was using this department out here, this is why we had to include the department details. If the department was not included there, then you need not have done an include out here. If it was not being shown on that page. All right. So that's your index. This is, of course, in a loop, initially showing you the heading and then showing you what after that, all the records. All those records are being shown on it. So if I run this and show you, let's run this and show you. So this is now showing you employees index. All the records in your database are being picked up and shown out here without writing any code. I'm not in a line of code so far. Who's doing this fetching? Fetching of records, showing the records in there. Who's doing all this hard work? Who's doing this? This is being done for you by your DB context class. Right? So these are the records that we had out. This is your index page. Clear? Yes. Let's turn our attention to create. In create, initially these values are blank, but there's a drop down here created automatically. All right. Let's see how this is working. So if you go to the controller, let's look at create. Initially, these values are blank. These values are blank. What is this one doing? What is this one doing? What is that line doing? Viewback.department number. What is that being used for?
Drop down.
Yes. For creating a select list. And that is how they are populating the drop down. Okay. Other than that, the object was blank out here. We have used a slightly different approach. They are using a slightly different. They're passing a select list out here, which takes a db.departments as a parameter. This is the value, and this is the, the text to be displayed. So what is the value and what is the text? So you can try doing this as well. Slightly different approach. help me with this. We go into create, right? Again, model is employee, right? Similar code to before. And here it's taking a drop-down list box of department number, which is now directly picking up the values. So improvement over the code that we wrote. Slightly easier way of doing this. You can incorporate this in the code that you wrote. Are we clear on this? The only reason why I didn't write this code was because I wanted you to use the slightly longer approach, and then you can use it in a shorter way in this. That's your create. After the create get, next thing that happens is the create post. Tell me what is different in what they are doing with what we did. Look at the method first. They are also taking what? What are they taking here? Employee as a parameter. But what is it? What is it that they are doing different? What are they giving out here? What are they specifying out here?
Properties, specific properties to be included.
So what they are saying is that from the employee, please bind and include these properties. Which properties? Employee number, name, basic, and department number. The other properties don't bind. Only bind which ones? Only bind which ones? These ones. How many properties do we have?
5.
4.
But as
Okay,
in,
but the 5th one also, you're right. But they're saying that bind 4. Now, if you don't bind it, if you don't give the bind so and so, by default, it binds everything. So what are you doing? You're limiting what you want to bind by either giving an include, or there's also an option here for exclude. And you could say exclude is equal to, exclude is equal to, and the properties that you want to exclude. So supposing, for example, if you had 50 properties, 50 in your class, and you wanted to bind only 4. So you say include so and so. But if there are 50 properties and you wanted to bind 49 of them, you don't want one. You want 49 of them you want. So don't say include so and so. Then directly give what? Exclude so and so. And if you don't give this bind, then by default, what is it doing? By default, how many does it bind? By default, how many does it bind?
all of them.
All of them. So would your code also work? Would this code also work if I didn't give bind? If I didn't give bind, will it still work? Yes, same as before. But bind allows you to either include or exclude certain properties while binding it. So that's an optional attribute that you want to take. So now you can actually, from all this code that is being generated, you can actually take a few takeaways and say, okay, this is what I can use in my code as well. Okay. All right. If model state dot is valid, if it has been correctly bound, is what model state dot is valid is. If it had any errors while binding it, if there were any errors, then is valid will return false. So for example, what if the employee name did not, validate, certain validations did not run, was not correctly validated, then it would have errors in them. So then is valid will return false. So model state dot is valid is checking whether all the properties that you're bound, whether they worked correctly or whether they gave, even if one of them gave an error, then is valid would be false. So this is an additional check that you are performing. So if it's valid, then what is this line doing? Can you tell me what this is doing? DB is this guy. DB is this guy. So db.employees.add. What is this doing?
So adding employee to the list of employees.
Adding it to the collection, and to save it to the database, db.savechanges. So this is just simply, changing or rather adding one record and calling save changes. Save changes is actually committing to the database. That's it. So I didn't need to do this. Who's doing all this code? Who's doing all this code?
DB
The
context.
DB context class. Nowhere have I written a SQL statement. Nowhere have I done that. All of that is being done for you by the warranty. So what are they doing after that? What is this line doing? Simply redirect to index. So you know how this works. Why are they doing these two lines? Because you had the same error earlier in the day. What is the error that you had? If it gives an error, if it's not valid, then they're returning a view of employee, and you are returning a blank object, and that is what is causing a problem. So this would take care of it. So this is just, if this was not valid, then stay on the same page. Let's look at edit. Edit takes an ID as a parameter. What are they using out here?
Nullable type.
Checking whether it's null or not. So if it's null, then what? Then what? What is this HTTP status code result? It's a derived class of action result. So throw a HTTP status code bad result. So when you're trying this code, try not passing it an ID and see what is the error status returned out. Okay. Line 72. Find the ID. If not found, what is this code now? What is this one now? 404. Right? 404.
Yes, sir.
Correct. Have we tried something like this? We have tried this, I think on day one we tried it. I don't know how many of you all tried it out, but this was what was expected of you to test it out and see how it's working. All right. What are these last one? What is 77 doing? What is this one for? This line is for the drop down. Okay. So this is the get for the edit. Can you tell me what the post for the edit will return? Post for edit would return what?
So almost same as create.
So again here, first part here is, this is the post for credit, post for edit, check getting the employee details, and again bind what to include. So similar code to earlier. If it's valid, then see what they're doing. db dot entry of employee dot state is equal to entity state dot what are the four states that we talked about? Four
Unchanged,
states were unchanged,
added,
modified,
and
added or delete.
Yeah,
So what is this entity state like? It is
row
like
state.
row state. If you have tried out that example with row state, then this is exactly the same. So what am I saying? I'm saying for this employee, right? If this is the employee details that we are receiving, for this employee, change its state to modified. Say that this employee has been modified, and then call again what? Call save changes. So this is what they're doing for updating the record. Right? Same code as before. Delete. One possibility ID is null, then what? Bad request. Secondly, find the employee. If employee is not found, then what? Then what again? Not found. Otherwise, what? Otherwise, display the employee. This is what they're doing in delete. Okay. This is the same code. In fact, they'll do in details as well. Same thing. Identical code in here. Correct? Okay. What is it that you notice different out here? What is different out here? in the post for delete? What is so different?
So name is changed, delete confirmed, and something attribute is given action name, delete.
So they're given it as delete confirm. Now, why have they done that? Firstly, even if they're done, if they had written code as delete, now it would have worked correctly. It would have worked correctly. It wouldn't have, with the code that they have written, it would have worked correctly. So they didn't need to do that. They didn't need to make it delete confirm. They didn't need to do that. All right. Now I'll tell you where they would have needed to do that. They would have needed to do that if the signature of both of these were identical. So if this was also int question mark ID, then you're in trouble. Why are you in trouble? Why are you in trouble?
Method with same name
Because now you got
and parameters.
two methods having the same name and same parameters. So this is not allowed. This is not allowed. So in their code, actually, this was the code. So is the parameter different now? Is the parameter different now? Yes or no? Parameter different now, this code should work. But assuming the parameter was same, you cannot do this. You cannot do this. So what do? You give some other name to the method. What name had they given? What name had they given?
Delete confirmed.
Delete confirmed. Now that delete confirmed has no meaning. Has no meaning. You can call this method any name you want. So even with this code, it will work. So this name is not important. This name is not important at all. Because we are saying that this name, the method name is this, but the action name is what? Action name is delete. So where would we use delete now? Where would we use this? If you had two methods having the same name, same parameters, then you give the other method a different action name. And as I said, the name can be anything that you want. Doesn't have to be in X, Y, or Z or whatever. All right. So I'll leave it the way it was that they had generated, which was delete confirmed. So this is what they have done. Clear? Okay. What are they doing in this one? Find the employee, delete him, remove him, and then what? Save changes. So if you're working with a collection, you will find that they are actually doing simple things with the collection. Add it to the collection, save changes. Remove it from the collection, save changes. Change the entity row state, entity state, and save changes. So this is how all this code would work. And this is how the entity framework is doing things for you. Are we clear on this? So last now, I don't know, half an hour, 45 minutes, I don't know how long I'm talking, but I'm just talking. I have not written one line of code. I don't know if they have noticed this. I have not written one line of code. Other than choosing the database name and all that, I didn't do anything. I just did click. And it generated all of that. So this is what the entity framework does to me. And then of course, once you have these methods, you need to know how to call these methods. Like for example, if I had to ask you to create that login page with the entity framework, very easy to do that as well. But you need to know then now which methods to call. So this is what you need to work with. I'm going to take about 15-20 minutes more and I'm going to complete my example. So don't look at your watches. Officially 10 minutes to go, but unofficially till we finish. If you don't ask questions, then it will take long. Then I'll keep waiting. Ask me question, no question, I will not go ahead. So please ask me questions that you are not clear about. So first thing is, this was the code that we had generated for employees controller. Similarly, you could have generated a departments controller. How would I do that? Help me with this. Creating a departments controller. Quick.
Saying controller
Right click,
add
add controller, which one?
third option.
Right, model class,
Department.
everything else the same, no changes there, right? And that's your department's controller. And then you could also generate the views and everything else for you. Okay, so you can try doing this as well. Now, I want to take you to the web.config file. Right, we have not seen that so far. I said it's an important file, but we have not seen that so far. And one of the entries that is added out there is this connection strings. It has added this. And see whether you can make sense of this connection string. See whether you can make sense of this connection string. So connection strings, add name equal to so and so. Okay, all of this is one part. Connection string is equal to, and the connection string ends here. Right? And where is this connection string being picked up from? Can you guess where it got picked up from? Where did this connection string get picked up from?
So
Any guesses?
in the start when we were making like project.
When we connected to our database and all of that, it generated that connection string and showed it to us. So this is how it generated the connection string. But this is a very dirty looking connection string that we can't make any sense of. Out of this connection string, what do I actually only need? What do I only actually need? I need what? I need what? I need this data source, initial catalog, integrated security. I don't even need Mars and all of this. So this is what I actually need. This was what we have been giving all this while. We have been giving only little. They have given everything in the connection string. Are we getting this? So these are the three things that you give in the connection string. What are the three things that you give here? First is name of the connection string. Right? Any name. This can be any name. It doesn't have to be this name. It can be any name. It can be called X. Secondly, what else? What is this second part here? Second part is what?
The details about the database.
Correct. And third part is what?
The managed provider name.
The provider name. Who's actually, which provider are you actually using now? All right. Now, just like there's an entity client, there's a system.data.sql client, the one that we have been working with. So that entity client use all that dirty connection string. The one that we are using, system.data.sql client, use the cleaner connection string. Okay. So this is essentially what you can do. Details about your connection string can be given in the config file and can be read by you programmatically. Okay. Now I'm going to use the same feature in the next example. Okay. So let's see what we're going to do out here. Keep the connection string as is. I'm going to try out the reverse process. And the reverse process is I'm going to actually do a code first. So code first would require me to do what now? First thing is, instead of generate classes, what would I do? In here, in code, this was, of course, DB first. In code first, what would I do? First, what? First, write code for classes. And then second step would be what? Generate DB. So writing code for the classes would be the exact same code that we are writing out here. Whatever code it was generating for us, That's the same code that we're going to write out here. Okay, let's do this. Go on for a new, now you all don't do this. I'm going to go a little quicker. Go on for Visual Studio project. Create a new project. Right, again an ASP.NET MVC project. And let me call this as entity first EF, rather code first example. Right. Okay. Create. First step is my code requires the entity framework, entity, the DB context, the DB set, all those classes. My code requires that. So first step would always be what? What do we need to do first before we do anything else? First step, if I need those classes in my code, what would I need to do?
Add a reference.
Instead of adding a reference for external references, what do you do? What is the term used?
NuGet.
Do a NuGet on. So that's what I'm doing here. Tools, NuGet package manager, manage NuGet packages for solution. Again, it's a repetition of what I did in the previous one. Go to browse, select entity framework, and add that package. Right? So same way as we added out earlier, install that package and accept. So this is added the package. All right. Okay. Once you've added the package, now what next? First step, I don't have the database. I don't have anything, in fact. First step would be what?
Create models.
Create models. So add a class and let's call this as employee class. All right. I'll have to create department class, I'll have to create employee class, and I'll have to also create one more class. What are the other classes that I have to create? Third class is what? What department? I got employee and the main class, the magician.
DB context.
Class inheriting
The
DB
class that inherits from DB context. All right. So I have some code which I'm going to copy paste, which is doing exactly that. Okay, just so that you can see all of them together, I have put them into the same file. This can be in different files, but just for the sake of brevity and to see them all together and putting them into the same file. So you can actually create 3 different classes, one called employee, one called department, and one called whatever, DB context, a class inheriting from there in 3 different files. I'm not doing that. All right, few things that it requires here. First thing is what? What is missing here is what using is missing. System.data.entity. So that's the using missing. Okay. Second thing is, I don't know if you remember earlier in the day, I told you that while naming your primary keys, you have 3 options available to you. And the 3 options are, you can either name your primary key as ID. That's the first option. Either name it as ID. Second possibility is what?
Class name and ID.
Very good. Class name and ID. And the third possibility is if you're giving it some other name, then you need to give it a data annotation of key. So that's what I'm actually doing out here. I've given it a data annotation of key for employee number and department. Right? Okay. What else do I have now here? What are these? These are the employee properties. What is this? What am I using this for? For accessing department. Similarly, department is a collection of employees. So this is the code is an exact copy of the code that was generated earlier. Create a department class, create an employee class, and what else? And what else? Create what? Create a what?
class inheriting DB context.
Create a class that inherits from DB context. Okay. Now, I had done this with your previous batch only, so that's why the name was JK MyDB context. Now, remember, this is going to create a database for you. Your database is not there. It's going to create a database for you. It's going to create that employee table. It's going to create the departments table. So now the question is, where should it create the database? Where should it create it? How will it create the database? So what it will do is it will try to connect to SQL Server by default. And the default SQL Server which is installed on this machine, it will try to connect to that and create a database in that SQL Server. Now you can customize this. So what are the ways in which you can customize this? Look here carefully. Look carefully. What is this here? Can you see this? What is this? What is this here? What is this?
Constructor.
Here this is the constructor. So in your constructor, you can write a constructor and say :base name equal to CN. Now the CN here is the name of the entry in the web.config of the connection string that you're given in there. I'll repeat what CN is. CN is the name of the connection string that you're given in web.config. And in web.config, you can now go and specify what should be the connection string. So, do I have that open somewhere? No, I think I have closed that. Okay, I've closed that. Forget it. Or is it there here? No, it's not there. So what I can do here is, first possibility is go to my web.config, view solution explorer, and in the web.config, all right, you can do it right at the beginning only. Just like after app settings, there's a entry here called connection strings. All right, with a connection string, you would specify add name equal to, and this is the name that I'm giving. So I'm saying CN. So this name that I'm giving here is the name that I'm using in my code out there. So name equal to CN. What else? Second possibility is connection string is equal to, and this should be your actual connection string. So data source equal to, initial catalog equal to, and integrated security equal to true. And the third thing here is provider name equal to. So provider name is equal to system dot data dot SQL client. That is the provider that I'm using. Does this make sense? So the name of the database should be given here. So give me the connection string. If you're not clear about it, you give it to me. Give me the connection string. What is there in the connection string? Give me quickly. Yes.
Data source, initial catalog.
Equal to name of your SQL server. What else? Initial catalog equal to, now this is the new database that you're creating. It's not an existing database. And what else? Third possibility.
Integrated security.
All right. So this is what you're giving. And whatever name that you give here, the name of this connection string, whatever name that you give here, is the name that you can give in here. So database will be named as given in the connections string section in the web.conf for this particular connection string. Is that making sense? Yes, everybody. So when you're in the lab and you're trying it out, you will, I have not given that. I have left it as what? I have left it as blank. I'm not given that. You go and complete this. Given whatever you want. And we'll create tables for you in this initial catalog. Okay. Second possibility is you say this :base of, and then you actually give the database name here. So you don't depend upon the connection string. You give the database name here itself. And that is what you'll be giving in the database. Are we understanding this? That's the second possibility. The third possibility is you don't give anything at all. You don't give anything at all. Now, what is this name of this DB context class? What is the name of the DB context class? What is the name of this DB context class? EF code first example dot models dot JK my DB context. So if you don't give anything in there, this is what it will be called. This is what the database will be called. So you're just controlling what should be the name given to the database out there. Either give nothing at all, or give what? Second possibility, give the database name, or third possibility, what? Third possibility is what? What is this highlighted possibility? Give the name in the connection string and give the name of the connection string here. So one of the three you could use. Now, if you use this option of not giving anything at all, this is the same as if you don't write a constructor. So this is the default option. By default, it does what? Colon base of so and so. Right? That's what it does, right? Your default constructor calls the base class constructor without any parameters. So if you don't give any name, that is what would be called. So same name if no constructor is given. So I'm trying it out this. But when you're in the lab, try it out with these three options. Are we clear on this, everybody? We are creating the models. Every time you touch your model, what do you do? Every time you even touch your model,
Build it.
So build solution. Done. Model done. Model done. Now what? Now what? Model done. Now what?
Controller.
Go ahead. Tell me steps. Tell me the steps.
Add control.
Right click. Is it running? Right click. Add controller. MVC controller with entity framework. Model class. Let's start with department. Why am I asking you to start with department and not employee? Why should department go in first and employee second?
Foreign key.
Well done. Because there's a foreign key in employees refers to department. So unless you add departments, you can't add employees. Data context class, of course, was this one. Name the controller, department's controller, add it. Everything done. Views also created. Right. Again, add a controller, this time for employees. So model class is employee. Everything else is the same and add it. Database has been created so far. Have we created the database so far?
No.
Right. Okay. Now, let me show you SQL Server. The name of this was EF code first example. Right. EF code first example. Let me see whether I have something called EF code first example or not. So databases and do I have EF code first example here? Right? Because I had done that with one of my previous batches. So let me drop this database, delete this. Okay. Now I don't have a EF code first example. And let's try running this. Let's try creating this. Okay. So I'm going to run departments first. I explain why I need to run departments first, because unless I add records in departments, I cannot add records in employees. And let's run this. The first time that you run this, it is actually creating the database for you. So first time that you run this, sometimes on slower machines, the operation times out. And it's timing out because it has not yet finished creating the tables. So when that happens, it gives you an error saying it has timed out. Don't worry about it. Stop running it and run it again. So then when you run it again, it will continue from the point where it had stopped off and complete all the creation of all the tables for you. Right? So let's have a look at this. So this is now creating departments. Let me add a few departments, create a new department. Right? Create a new department. Right? Added a few departments here. Done. Let's add employees slash. So I don't have any employees to begin with. Let me create a few employees. Right? And you'll find that this is what is being done. This created an employee. Create. Right? These are records. Fully functional code. Details works. Right? Edit works. And of course, delete also. Right? So delete also works. I'm not deleting it, but this is what is actually happening. If you look at the SQL Server right now, the name was what? EF code first example. All right. If you look at the name of the controller, EF code first example dot models dot JK MyDB context. So that is the name that it has generated out with. This one. If you check out the tables, okay, there's the departments and the employees table, and it also tells you in the migration history when this table was actually created. So let me just open migration history and show you. It's taking too long to open this, not responding. Let me open this again. Close this. Right. What I was actually trying to show you here was this. If it's taking too long, you can just see it in your own listing. Basically, it shows you when that table was created. So any changes that you make, and if you update these tables later again, the migration history would keep track of those changes. Okay. The departments and employees, of course, have been picked up from the structure of the class that we had given out here. But for some reason, it's not responding when I'm trying to open the migration history. I don't know why. Maybe I just need to be more patient and keep talking more out here, and that would come up a few seconds later. But leave that aside. Leaving the migration history aside, what we have tried out here are two techniques. The first technique was the DB first approach, wherein from the database we created the classes, and then we actually went and wrote down the code for it. Created the code for the controller and all that, and then we didn't write code, it actually called the code out there. The second approach that we used was the code first approach. When we first created the classes, the two classes we created on employee departments, then a DB context class, and then it actually picked it up. So yeah, so this is the migration ID saying when it was first created. And as you keep making changes to this, it will just keep track of those options out there. Okay, if you make any changes in the structure of the table. So this is what it would keep doing that. Are we clear on this, everybody? All right, questions if any? So we had a look at the, the intro to the entity framework. The entity framework is quite a huge topic by itself, right? And I've shown you how to do the basics out here, but if I have to teach you everything that is there in the entity framework and how things can be done out there, will probably take about a week or 2 weeks, of maybe close to 10 days to actually do all of that. I have about 2 hours to show you all of it. So whatever we have done is the basics of the entity framework. Not many more things that are there in here, but that's beyond the scope of what is there in our course coverage out. All right. So the topics that we have covered till the end of today are the topics that you're going to be tested on in the lab exam and in the theory exam day after tomorrow. All right. So there are a few more things. I fell ill yesterday and I could not take a session. I would have hoped to have finished off the majority of the code yesterday and today. But since yesterday didn't happen, the thing has got postponed. So Nisha ma'am would update you when our next session would be. The session that we are having after that is not, you're not going to be tested in this module and exam, but obviously would be tested in your CDAC main exam. So there are certain topics that are still remaining, which we will cover later. But from a lab exam point of view and the theory exam point of view, whatever we have done till today, that is the cutoff date. All right. Anything that you want to ask me, because I'm not going to connect with you till your exam directly. Anything that you would like to ask me, quickly go ahead and ask. All right. So if there are no further questions, then all the best for your exam. Right. Lab exam, I'm telling you again, if you'll have practiced all that we have done in class, and if you have practiced everything, if you know everything that we've done in class out here in terms of being able to complete those examples in the lab, I see no reason why you can't get a full 100%. Conversely, if you have not practiced at all, and if you're either, relying on somebody else's code or whatever, and this thing, then tough for you. So I wish you well. See you all sometime soon. Right? Bye for now.
Thank you, sir.